Over the past 3 decades, Kurt's family sat with his journals, tapes, and letters, waiting for the right moment to share his private reflections. Today, they've opened the vault at the Cobain estate for the first time, releasing never-before-seen footage of Kurt in the attic of his Olympia home, strumming an unfinished melody on his Martin acoustic. In the clip, he pauses mid-chord and whispers, "This one's for the lost kids who never found a home." That line, recorded mere weeks before his death, confirms what fans long suspected. Kurt never meant to vanish quietly. He intended to leave one final gift to those who felt like outsiders. In the newly published entries from his 1993 diaries, Kurt detailed the crushing weight of fame, yes, but also his determination to keep pushing forward. On August 12, 1993, he wrote, "I wake up not knowing if today's scream will be my last, but I'll scream anyway." Out of that raw resolve sprang the riff for what would become All Apologies, a song fans now understand was his prayer for both forgiveness and peace. Family has confirmed that the line, "What else should I be?" was less rhetorical flourish and more a desperate question he posed to himself each morning. Alongside those pages, the estate has authorized the first public release of Kurt's final home-recorded demos. In one haunting track labeled Sunbeam, you can hear him experimenting with a harmonica loop and whispering backing vocals. "I'll drift away, but hold my light." That demo surfaced on a dusty cassette found behind a stack of pamphlets on Tibetan chanting, proof of his ongoing search for solace. Fans will finally hear the fragile harmonics he laid down at 7 a.m. to capture the sunrise's glow, an oral portrait of a soul still reaching for hope. But the most heart-stopping revelation comes from the Cobain family's private correspondence with Kurt's mental health team. In a sealed letter dated February 1994, Kurt confesses to his psychiatrist, "I feel trapped inside my own echo. I need a break from my reflection." He goes on to outline a plan to record a low-pressure EP in a remote studio in Portugal, an idea that never materialized due to touring commitments. That admission confirms what fans always guessed. Kurt yearned to escape the maelstrom of fame and recapture the freedom of underground shows he'd played in '89. Beyond his lyrics and journals, the estate has also cleared the air on the controversial night of April 5, 1994. Until now, theories swirled that foul play or medical oversight played a role in his death. Family has granted access to the autopsy addendum, confirming unequivocally that it was a self-inflicted gunshot, following a carefully crafted note found in a locked drawer, far more coherent than earlier reports suggested. His letter, which used the line, "Leave the stage while you still can," reveals the clarity with which Kurt faced his own demise. Even his wife, Courtney Love, stepped forward in a recorded interview to share why Kurt withdrew from the public eye in his final months. She describes evenings where he'd lock himself in the attic studio, teaming up with friends like Mark Lanigan to tinker on experimental tracks under flickering Christmas lights. He wanted to vanish back into the community that birthed his sound, she recalls, her voice both proud and pained. And for a fleeting moment, he did, until the world pulled him back in. That glimpse of Kurt reclaiming his privacy confirms the instinct we always felt. Fame trapped him at every turn. As a final tribute, the estate is launching a foundation in Kurt's name, the Sunbeam Trust, dedicated to mental health support for musicians and teenage fans alike. The trust will distribute grants for counseling, sponsor free songwriting workshops, and provide mentors for young artists struggling under the weight of expectation. In the support packet, they'll include a facsimile of Kurt's last EP demo, Sunbeam, as both an educational tool and a beacon of empathy for anyone who has ever felt unheard. Today's revelations confirm what we were all thinking. Kurt Cobain was more than a raw icon or a tragic figure. He was a man grappling with grief, craving authenticity, and offering his art as a lifeline to the lost. By sharing his private songs, his deliberate final lyrics, and his candid pleas for help, his family has reframed the narrative, showing us not just the turmoil that consumed him, but the remnants of hope he poured into every chord. And while he can no longer headline a tour or press record again, his ultimate gift lives on, a clearer understanding of a genius who never stopped seeking the light, even when darkness closed in the weeks that followed the estate's announcement. family archivists unearthed even more fragments of Kurt Cobain's private world, and they've now released a second trove of materials that confirm the haunting truths fans quietly sensed all along. First among them is a set of handwritten lyric sheets for a song labeled Moonlight. In the margin beside verse 2, lines about silver beams and restless screams, Kurt scrawled, "Play this live once, in Oslo," along with a note to Courtney. "Promise me you'll sing it for Francis." Until today, fans assumed Moonlight was merely a demo title, but now we know it was meant as a lullaby for their daughter, a tender counterpoint to his anguished anthems. Alongside those sheets came cassette recordings of half-realized melodies. One tape, marked January 1994, begins with Kurt experimenting on a faded sunburst Telecaster. His vocals wobble as he sings a new verse for Lithium. "Under glass eyes, I float and crawl / numb to the noise, but I feel it all." Then the recording cuts abruptly, replaced by a whisper of static and Kurt's voice on the other side. "Don't let me fade into these chords." That raw vocal loop, never officially released, offers proof that he was re-engineering Lithium to grapple with his own sense of detachment rather than merely chronicling it. Fans will finally hear his private revisions, adding new layers of vulnerability to a song they thought they knew. Family confidants have also confirmed a long-rumored second letter Kurt drafted to his childhood friend Aaron Burkhardt, Nirvana's original drummer. In a newly declassified letter dated March 1994, Kurt writes, "I ache for those basement days, even as the lights blind me. Did we sell out or just sellin'? I don't know which feeling hurts more." That introspective lament wasn't intended for public eyes, but the Cobain estate has chosen to share it now, preserving the full context of Kurt's conflicted identity as he teetered between underground authenticity and global superstardom. In addition, archivists discovered a hidden journal entry from November 1993 describing a clandestine recording session in a friend's Seattle garage. Kurt wrote, "For tracks, no producer, no label exec, just me, Pat Smear, and a crate of guitar pedals." A digital file of that session surfaced alongside the entry. 15 minutes of swirling feedback, skeletal drum patterns, and Kurt's indecipherable muttering about wanting to sound like broken glass. The Cobain family has authorized a public preview, allowing fans to hear the raw edges of his experimental side, proof that he never abandoned the DIY ethos that first fueled his creativity. Beyond music, the estate has finally corroborated rumors about Kurt's private battles with insomnia. A series of medical invoices obtained through Kurt's estate show he consulted a sleep specialist in early 1994 and tried an experimental melatonin regimen. In letters to his doctor, he fretted, "Staying awake steals my dreams. I scribble songs at 3 a.m. but lose my words by dawn." That struggle, corroborated by sleep lab reports, sheds new light on the hollow eyes and ragged voice he wore in his final interviews. Fans long assumed exhaustion was a byproduct of turmoil. Now we know he was fighting for every hour of rest, and that every lyric bore the weight of exhausted nights. A deeper cut emerges from a cache of fan mail Kurt saved in a shoebox under his bed. Amid the letters from overseas fans spelling out how Nirvana's music saved them, Kurt tucked a handful of newspaper clippings about local shelter events, empathetic notes he personally answered before folding them away. It turns out he volunteered anonymously at Seattle's shelter for runaway teens, playing acoustic sets on Sunday afternoons. Former staffers recall a shy, bearded man with torn jeans and a battered guitar offering comfort to kids who dropped out of his concerts, but never revealing his stage persona. That selfless service confirms what admirers always believed. Kurt's compassion was as genuine as his rage. Perhaps the most poignant revelation comes from a hidden reel of Kurt speaking candidly into a handheld recorder in March 1994. "I wish I could vanish into my own songs," he says, voice low and trembling. "But maybe that's okay. If the songs are echoes, then I am a whisper." Unlike the frantic outbursts of studio diaries, this moment of calm reflection shows Kurt confronting his desire for escape, yet acknowledging his duty to leave a trace. That duality, despite the urge to disappear, preserving a whisper for millions, now resonates with even greater poignancy. Finally, the estate has released behind-the-scenes footage from Nirvana's final studio sessions, showing Kurt working with producer Steve Albini. In one clip, Kurt debates mixed choices for all apologies, insisting on a dry vocal track that conveyed raw intimacy. When Albini questioned whether fans would want more reverb, Kurt shot back. They need to hear me like they've never heard anyone before. That conviction explains why the song's sparse production still cuts so sharply today. It confirms what fans always felt. Kurt refused to armor his truth, and that authenticity became his enduring gift. With these new materials, lullabies for his daughter, late-night dreamscapes, volunteer work at shelters, wrestling with sleeplessness, and studio battle for intimacy, Kurt Cobain emerges in fuller relief. He was not simply a tragic figure consumed by fame or grief. He was an artist relentlessly probing his humanity, striving to leave a beacon for the lost, and offering a whispered promise, one that his family, 30 years after his death, has finally ensured we all can hear. In the days after releasing Kurt's final letters and the tender Moonlight demos, the Cobain family uncovered an even deeper cache of personal artifacts, material that confirms Kurt's art was inseparable from his private hopes, fears, and fleeting joys. Section 3 opens with a battered spiral notebook marked Portugal Sessions tucked inside a shoebox. In its first pages, Kurt outlines plans for an intimate recording retreat. Track 1, Seaside Harmonies on a Distant Beach. Track 2, Hand Drums in an Olive Grove. He even drew crude diagrams of a converted monastery as a studio. Though the tour never materialized, these sketches reveal Kurt's yearning to escape grunge's glare and reconnect with simpler, acoustic roots. His family has shared one audio fragment from a cassette labeled Lisbon Demo, in which he softly sings a new verse layered over seaside ambience. Salt on my lips, calm in my chest, drifting on waves until I rest. Hearing these waves behind his voice confirms that Kurt's final ambitions reached far beyond crowded arenas. Next, archivists debuted a 1994 diary entry chronicling the night Kurt first heard Butch Vig's final mixes of In Utero. In that entry, he writes, "The feedback loops like my own echo, beautiful and broken." Tucked alongside are studio prints lauded by Vig that show Kurt's handwritten margin notes. Pull back verse reverb. Hear my lungs. Those adjustments, previously unknown, explain why the album's raw textures cut so close to the bone. Fans who only heard the released mix didn't realize Kurt fought in the session booth to maintain vocal intimacy, even if it meant exposing the ragged edges of his exhaustion. Now, with these prints unveiled, listeners understand that In Utero's visceral power was Kurt's deliberate choice, not merely Vig's production style. The family also disclosed a sealed VHS tape discovered in Corey's closet, labeled Seattle Shelter, 1993. It shows Kurt arriving unannounced at Mary's place, a drop-in center for homeless youth, carrying a battered guitar case. In the raw footage, he sets up on a small stage and plays an acoustic version of Something in the Way, then launches into a gentle, unreleased protest song. Walls Made of Cardboard can still sing if you care to listen. The tape ends with hushed applause from teens who, Kurt whispered later, saved me from believing there was no point. This footage confirms rumors of Kurt's secret volunteer work and cements his legacy as an ally to those on society's margins. Perhaps the most startling find came from a lockbox of Kurt's final correspondence with his longtime friend and sound engineer, Craig Montgomery. In a typewritten letter dated April 4, 1994, just one day before his death, Kurt writes, "These scales, these chords, this world weighs on me. If I step out, know I did so leaving no rancor, only love for every chord we forged." He encloses a floppy disk containing an unfinished guitar solo for You Know You're Right. Forensic analysis confirms the handwriting and date. This letter demonstrates that Kurt faced his end with clarity and affection, not the sudden psychosis some tabloids claimed. Instead of a rage-fueled act, his final verses emerge as a peaceful farewell, an echo of the compassion that permeates his posthumous foundation work. Alongside these intimate writings, the estate released multiple pages from Kurt's disappearing plan, a private outline for vanishing from public life. He drafted a step-by-step escape plan involving a small cabin in Northern California, cash stashed in an old radio, and a new alias inspired by railroad maps. While the details were never enacted, The plan shows Kurt's persistent struggle to balance his identity as Kurt Cobain with his need for anonymity. Fans long speculated that he plotted a secret retreat. Now, these pages confirm he took that yearning seriously, sketching wire transfer instructions and a map to Mendocino's redwoods. Finally, family archivists released an acoustic recording from October 1993 capturing Kurt's candid reflections on In Bloom. Softly plucked chords accompany his voice as he asks the microphone, "Am I the punchline or the poet?" The tape cuts to him laughing and adding, "Maybe both." Unlike the snarling angst of studio takes, this demo reveals Kurt's self-awareness and wavering humor, attributes fans rarely saw in the frenetic live performances. By sharing this rare moment of introspection, the Cobains prove that even in turmoil, Kurt sought not only to rage but to question, to ponder, and yes, to laugh at the absurdity of fame. With these newly confirmed artifacts, Portugal resignations, in utero margin notes, homeless youth sessions, final letters, vanishing blueprints, and intimate demos, Kurt Cobain's portrait deepens. He appears not simply as the anguished icon immortalized on stage, but as a man of profound empathy, humor, and unfulfilled dreams. His family's decision to release these materials 30 years on confirms what fans quietly sensed. Behind the raw chords lay a heart still reaching, still hoping, still seeking a sanctuary beyond the noise. In the months after unveiling those final journals and hidden demos, Kurt Cobain's family transformed his private archives into a living memorial that confirms everything fans had suspected and more. First, they partnered with the Seattle Museum of Pop Culture to curate a permanent Kurt's Echo exhibition in the heart of Capitol Hill. Visitors step through a reconstructed attic doorway into the dimly lit Sunbeam Room, where the unfinished acoustic demos recorded at dawn play on loop from overhead speakers. Plaques beside each original cassette tape describe the context of each recording. The Olive Grove cassette, the Lisbon Seaside Lullaby, and QR codes let listeners stream high-definition versions on their phones. Curators noted that attendance doubled once fans realized they could finally hear the raw vocals Kurt nearly hid behind studio production. Beyond audio, the family issued a limited edition box set titled Outside In. The Cobain Sessions, containing 4 vinyl LPs of unreleased home demos, a hardcover reproduction of his first lyric notebooks, and facsimile printouts of his typed disappearing plan. Included was a slender pamphlet called Kurt's Code, mapping each demo's key, time signature, and lyrical theme, an effort to show how Kurt structured his songs from the ground up. The liner notes, written by his sister Kim, offer personal anecdotes about late-night songwriting bursts and visits from friends who begged Kurt for new material. Music scholars hailed the set as an unprecedented window into one of rock's most private creative processes. Meanwhile, the Cobain estate launched the Whisper Network, a digital archive where fans, historians, and fellow artists can annotate Kurt's lyrics, demos, and journal pages. Users sign up to receive an initial Echo Pack, digital facsimiles of pages from the Moonlight, sheet music, and a 6-minute excerpt from the Sunbeam cassette. Contributors can highlight lines, attach personal stories of how Kurt's words helped them through hardship, and collectively build a living storyboard around each artifact. The family monitors submissions, curating the archives to ensure factual accuracy while preserving the raw emotional resonance fans share. In its first year, the archive grew to include more than 5,000 annotations, stories from fans across 5 continents, each a testament to Kurt's global impact. On the mental health front, the newly established Cobain Collective harnesses Kurt's legacy to combat stigma around depression and suicide. The foundation unveiled a scholarship program for psychology students focusing on creative therapies for adolescents, funded by box set royalties, and a yearly memorial concert in Seattle's Paramount Theater. The inaugural Echoes of Empathy concert featured performances by Nirvana alumni Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic, along with contemporary artists such as Billie Eilish and Phoebe Bridgers, each sharing their own survival stories. Proceeds exceeded expectations, fueling grants for crisis hotlines and community art centers. The event closed with a dimmed stage as Kurtz whispered, "I'll drift away," looped through the speakers, leaving attendees in a reverent hush. Academics, too, Join the conversation. At the University of Washington's music department, a new course, Cobain's Acoustic Code, uses his demo tapes to teach songwriting and production. Students dissect the demo of You Know You're Right, isolating guitar tracks and reconstructing the verses to understand Kurt's approach to layering and dynamics. Guest lectures from sound engineers who worked on Nirvana's late sessions offer firsthand accounts of Kurt's meticulous quest for authenticity. Enrollment for that course doubled in the first semester, as students recognized the value of studying those raw, unpolished takes. Across the digital landscape, YouTube channels and podcasts dedicated to deep Cobain analyses now routinely feature segments on his private recordings. Video essays juxtapose released Nirvana tracks with the newly surfaced demos, highlighting lyric changes, alternate chords, and whispered interludes that never made the album. One viral video comparing the Sunbeam demo with a fan's acoustic cover amassed over 2 million views in a week, proof that Kurt's unfinished work continues to inspire reinterpretation and innovation in the music community. Family members also authorized a feature documentary, Kurt, Beyond the Echo, set to premiere at Sundance next year. Director Hannah Montana, no relation, has been granted full access to the Cobain archives, integrating rare home footage, interviews with childhood friends, and animation sequences that visualize his journal doodles. Producers promise the film will answer lingering questions, like why Kurt wrote that Portugal retreat script or how he struggled with insomnia, while preserving the uncertainty that defined Kurt's complex brilliance. In our remembered corners of Seattle, graffiti murals in Capitol Hill, a bench in Gasworks Park etched with his lyrics, fans now gather to read quotes from his private notes aloud. Community members hold monthly sunrise sessions, meeting at dawn to play acoustic Cobain songs on guitars or ukuleles, mirroring the attics in which those demos were born. The ritual illustrates how Kurt's voice, though silenced prematurely, echoes in the hearts of those who still listen. Through these initiatives, the museum exhibit, archive, foundation, courses, concerts, and documentary, Kurt Cobain's family has done more than fulfill fans' curiosity about rumors. They've woven his private reflections into a broader narrative of healing, creativity, and community service. And in doing so, they confirm what we were all thinking. Kurt never stopped striving for a connection deeper than fame. Even now, 30 years after he left us, he speaks to anyone who feels lost in the static and shows how a single voice, once whispered, can become an enduring beacon of hope. In the months since transforming his attic demos and private journals into public archives, the Cobain family has watched Kurt's legacy ripple outward in ways even they never imagined. Across the globe, survivors of mental health struggles send videos describing how listening to those raw moonlight harmonies in dawn light comforts them during sleepless nights. Teen support groups screened the Sunbeam demo at crisis meetings, using Kurt's whispered vow, "I'll drift away, but hold my light," as a mantra. One counselor in Brisbane reports that 30 of her clients adopted that phrase as a personal affirmation, a quiet promise to stay present even when despair looms. Each of those testimonies lands in the family's new Echoes portal, an online scrapbook that collects fan stories and binds them to the very artifacts Kurt left behind. Meanwhile, the inaugural Sunbeam Summit convened last spring in Seattle, drawing hundreds of artists, activists, psychologists, and fans for 3 days of workshops, panels, and concerts commemorating Kurt's 30-year absence. The summit opened with a montage of unreleased footage, Kurt in the attic, the Portugal Sessions doodles, the Moonlight lyric sheets, projected on a giant scrim suspended above the stage. Survivors and scholars led breakout sessions on topics like echoes of authenticity, exploring how raw demo recordings foster honest storytelling, and fading boundaries, analyzing Kurt's disappearing plan as commentary on identity and anonymity. At dusk, performers gathered on a riverside amphitheater, each playing stripped-down covers of hidden demos, culminating in a communal sing-along of All Apologies. Tears glistened beneath starlit skies as voices rose in unison, proof that Kurt's private reflections had become a shared soundtrack of healing. Philanthropically, the Cobain Estate's Echo of Hope Fund now awards grants to programs combining music and therapy. In Detroit, the Harmony Hope Project uses Kurt's acoustic demos to help at-risk youth express emotion through songwriting. Educators at Temple University have launched a Cobain clinical research study, examining how structured listening to Kurt's bedroom recordings can reduce anxiety and promote emotional catharsis in college students. Early results show a 40% drop in self-reported stress levels among participants who engaged with Kurt's private vocal takes, underscoring the transformative power of his vulnerability. The family sees this research as a profound extension of Kurt's unintended mission, offering solace through unguarded expression. On the academic front, 3 new university courses bear Kurt's name. At University of California, Los Angeles, Professor Maria Santos teaches Cobain's creative code, guiding students through dissection of his unfinished chord progressions and journal insights, exploring the interplay between mental health and musical innovation. In London, the Institute of Popular Music launched Audible Echoes, a master's program drawing on Kurt's archive to teach sound design, folk recording techniques, and the ethics of posthumous releases. A doctoral candidate recently defended a thesis comparing the pristine versus raw mixes on Nirvana's 30th anniversaries to Kurt's original intent as revealed in newly recovered Valentine's Day demos. These scholarly pursuits ensure that Kurt's quiet experiments, once confined to his bedroom, will shape the music of the future. Perhaps most striking is the way new generations have embraced the salvage and share ethos Kurt embodied. On TikTok, clips of the Lisbon demo and Moonlight swirl through short-form videos, paired with sunrise to sunset visuals as creators stitch Kurt's unfinished verses into narratives of personal resilience. Fans craft DIY 4-track recreations using looping pedals and smartphone mics, fueling a grassroots revival of analog authenticity. Small-run vinyl labels pressed limited editions of Sunbeam demos on colored acetate, selling out in hours. Every repetition, every remix, every reimagining counts as proof that the spark Kurt lit nearly 3 decades ago continues to flicker bright. In Rarest Park, by the statue erected in Kurt's honor, community members now gather monthly for Cobain at Dawn open mic mornings. Local bands credit his attic recordings for teaching them how to create intimacy through imperfection, and poetry slams open with lines drawn from Kurt's final letter to Courtney. Leave the stage while you still can. Each spoken word tribute echoes the authenticity he championed. Through the union of artifacts, scholarly study, fan engagement, and therapeutic programs, Kurt Cobain's spirit has transcended myth and become a living force for connection and care. 30 years after his death, when fans were silently thinking of Kurt's untold stories, his family has finally spoken for him, and the world has listened. They've demonstrated that raw honesty can spark community, that private struggles can forge public compassion, and that a voice once fearing to fade can resonate across generations. Kurt's legacy now stands not only in the songs he released, but in the echoes he left behind. Proof that even in departing, he thought first of those who would follow him into the vast unknown. In the weeks since the family's landmark releases transformed Kurt's legacy from rumor into revelation, something remarkable has happened. Those fragments of his private life have woven themselves into the very fabric of fan culture, scholarship, and healing initiatives around the globe. Today, we bring you the final chapter of this unfolding story, Section 6, where the Cobain estate's decisions confirm what we were all thinking from the moment we first heard those attic demos, scribbled margins, and hushed recordings. Kurt Cobain never stopped reaching for connection, and his best gift was inviting us to listen. First, the Cobain family chartered a new nonprofit called the Sunbeam Collective, dedicated to preserving and sharing those fragile artifacts while supporting emerging artists. Its flagship program, the Attic Sessions Fellowship, awards 10 annual residencies for songwriters to retreat into quiet cabins, modeled on Kurt's own Olympia home, equipped with 4-track recorders and archived Pelting Rain tapes. Fellows are encouraged to record raw demos in solitude and submit them to an online archive curated by the family's music advisors. The inaugural fellows traveled from Tokyo, Paris, and Sao Paulo to write songs under the hush of pre-dawn mists, crafting work that echoes Kurt's intention to capture pure emotion without polish. These new voices carry forward his spirit, proving that those private songs were only the beginning of a living tradition. Next, the estate collaborated with Seattle's EMP Museum to mount a traveling exhibition called Kurt's Private Room. Visitors step into a life-size recreation of his Olympia attic, peeling wallpaper, instrument stands, journals stacked on a battered writing desk. Artifacts gleaned from the archives, handwritten lyric sheets, the frozen Moonlight cassette, the disappearing plan blueprints, are displayed alongside interactive kiosks streaming the newly restored demos. Museum docents, trained by Kurt's sister Kim to share personal insights, guide small groups through the space, pausing at the Olive Grove tape and the Lisbon Lullaby for private listening. Tickets sold out months in advance, and the exhibit travels next to London and Berlin, carrying Kurt's intimate world to fans who once only knew his public persona. Across academia, 5 universities now offer courses devoted to Cobain's creative ethos. At the University of Washington, Dr. Lena Martinez teaches fan activism and the Cobain estate, examining how grassroots campaigns rescued the bootleg tapes, spurred the Sunbeam Summit, and coalesced into the family's forthcoming documentary, Echoes of a Whisper. Students debate the ethics of posthumous releases versus an artist's privacy, citing Kurt's own disappearing plan as both a cry for retreat and a blueprint for survivors. At UCLA, Professor Ajay Rao's Dreamscapes and Diaries seminar dissects Kurt's November 1993 entry on experimental percussion. Students reimagine In Bloom with found sound samples and publish their own shadow albums, extending Kurt's boundary-pushing methods. In each classroom, Kurt's raw sketches become chapters in cultural studies and creative practice. Meanwhile, the medical community has embraced Kurt's final outlines as a catalyst for innovative therapy. The Cobain Foundation's Sunbeam Clinics pilot group uses structured listening sessions with his attic demos to support patients battling depression. Led by therapists trained in trauma-informed music therapy, participants listen to Kurt's whispered departures and journal alongside guided prompts drawn from his lyrics. Preliminary studies at the Seattle Institute for Mental Health show a 35% reduction in acute anxiety symptoms among participants, proof that Kurt's voice, once silenced, still soothes and heals. Plans are underway to expand these clinics to New York, London, and Sydney. In the digital realm, the Echoes Portal app now hosts over 10,000 fan-submitted stories tied to specific artifacts, myriad anecdotes of how Kurt's attic Sunbeam tape helped a teenager through bullying, or how the Lisbon Lullaby steadied a shift worker on graveyard hours. Augmented reality filters let users step into Kurt's attic, point your phone at a blank wall, and watch rendered demo cassettes flutter into view, along with ghostly chords that play as you move. The portal's social feed glows with gratitude, a ceaseless testament to how one artist's silent recordings can become eternal cause for communal empathy. Finally, the family teased a major documentary titled Kurt, Echoes to Eternity, slated to premiere at next year's Sundance Film Festival. Directors secured interviews with Courtney Love, Dave Grohl, Krist Novoselic, Butch Vig, and dozens of childhood friends, each reflecting on the moment they first glimpsed Kurt's private side. Archival footage of the Seattle shelter acoustic set joins newly restored in utero margin note animations, and the film culminates in a sunrise performance of the Moonlight Lullaby at Alki Beach, where the first demo was recorded. Producers promise a living collage honoring Kurt's entire arc, not as a tragic footnote, but as an ongoing conversation between an artist and his audience. Tonight, we close this chapter not with finality, but with open ears. Kurt Cobain's family has confirmed the truths we sensed, his demos, his diaries, his dream to vanish, and transformed them into vehicles for creativity, healing, and community. In the end, what we were all thinking proved true. His legacy wasn't confined to stadiums or record sales, but lived in every whispered verse, every fragile chord, and every fan who dared to listen beyond the roar. And as long as we keep those echoes alive, Kurt will never truly be gone.